Thank you for thinking about Your Education Matters. Stepan Vdovine was first elected to the Maple Ridge-Pitt Meadows Board of Education at the age of 20 in 2005, becoming the youngest school trustee in the province. He was re-elected for a second term in 2008. An active public education advocate, Stepan believes that a modern education system is key to healthy communities and that neighborhood schools are inseparable from breaching social inequities and building a more civil society. Stepan's priorities for public schools include correcting the provincial policy of underfunding public schools, the erosion of equity in society, and the politics of division practiced in provincial politics. He views effective leadership and principled advocacy on behalf of the system as central to his elected role as a trustee. Stepan is active in progressive politics, currently serving as a table officer on Vision Vancouver's executive board, and is a political advisor to Vision Vancouver's VSB caucus. Outside of politics, he is a partner at a strategy and communications consultancy. Mr. Vdovine maintains his own educational blog and an active internet presence. We are pleased to welcome Trustee Stepan Vdovine to Your Education Matters. Welcome, Stepan. I wanted to have you talk about your background and the motivation that led you to become a school trustee, because you have a relatively unusual personal history and pathway at such a young age into this office.
Thanks for having me. I ran quite early, actually, just a year and a half after I graduated from secondary school. And I grew up in a family that always had strong emphasis on education, on the value of education. My mom is a teacher. There's a number of teachers in the family, so we've always had interesting conversations in the family at the dinner table. And so the appreciation of education and the kind of role it plays and the kind of opportunities it provides have always been very strong for me. And my grandmother actually continues to be a very engaged citizen, so to speak. She's active politically, she has strong opinions, and that has always, I think, had a role in developing my own sense of what's right and what's wrong, and how citizens should be engaged. And I've always wanted to see if that was an avenue of politics, something that I might want to pursue, and I thought that running for school board would be a perfect fit, because I just graduated from a secondary school. I felt like I had a connection, and I thought that I had a unique voice to add, which was a perfect fit, because every other politician out there thinks that they have a unique voice to add.
Well, I think it speaks well to our system and to the trustee system that somebody like yourself could get in at such an early age and represent the voice of students and other young people. Ideally, that's what democracy is about, is to have all those voices, and there was a pathway for you, obviously, and you took it. Now that you're in this role of trustee, and you've been in it for some years, I'd like you to talk about what you see as the top priorities for trustees, at least from your point of view, what the issues are that you find yourself working on and thinking about the most.
Well, we find ourselves, I think, at this point in time in a very interesting position. On one hand, I think we have enormous potential to create a kind of public education system that truly does serve students, allows them to develop their individual personalities, tap into their creativity in order to become the kind of citizens that we always want them to become. You know, there's immense technological advances that have been made in science, in other areas. There's pedagogical research like never before. I mean, those are all essential components, and they're there for us, ready to, like I said, unleash the kind of education system that we all dream about. Yet the government policy, particularly the policy of testing and the policy of underfunding, I think stands in a way of unleashing that kind of education system. So the key priority for us at this point in time is addressing the enormous challenge, which is the issue of funding, which hasn't kept up with the kind of cost that we've seen. It presents huge challenges in school districts. It's been now for over 10 years that we've seen cuts, deep cuts, and that's a challenge.
So I'm wondering specifically what sort of things you see districts cutting because of the current level of funding, where the pain is actually hitting in our public school system.
Well, there's cuts that have been taking place for 10 years, and they're evident anywhere you look, in fact. You look at the special education. I mean, if there's an area where we need to blow a whistle as hard as we can, it's the area of special education. But then all other areas are impacted as well. You look at the closure of schools in many districts. You look at the classrooms and the number of special need kids that are there. Just general looking at the number of kids in some classrooms. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about. Cuts to essential programs, I consider programs like arts and sports to be essential to the emotional and physical development of students, and we've seen some very deep cuts in those areas, and that leads to inequity because the traditional role that education has played in terms of giving people mobility to move from one socio-economic level to another. I think that education that has always served that role is no longer there to the same extent that it could be.
The cost of special education, I think, has been masked in British Columbia. I know by one analysis in the United States, all the new money in education since 1970 is equivalent to the increased investment in special education. So there's been an enormous investment in special education in the U.S. at the expense of really any other reform. And in BC, somehow we've been able to get by without that kind of investment, but it's, as you say, it seems to be getting acute lately because there's further rollbacks and erosion of class size and composition principles.
And I do want to say that some of these cuts are not evident immediately. It takes time. You know, we're riding a bit of a capital that has been accumulated over the years. And to a general voter, to a general member of the public, some of these cuts are not immediately evident, but they are very evident in our classes, in our schools, and they will become more and more evident as time goes by. And I think in a decade or so, we'll know the impact of these cuts. And I think at that point in time, you know, if the reason to reverse this policy isn't compelling enough now, there will be an economic reason down the road to reverse it then.
I'm interested in what you're saying about technology, too. You said that you're very interested in how, as a trustee, you can see technology enter more into the life of schools. Mm-hmm. Could you be more specific about what you're thinking of?
Well, we, you know, technology is here, and it's here to stay. You know, I use my 2 screens all the time, and we see kids come into schools with, you know, handheld devices like this, where they can access Google and Wikipedia and virtually any kind of resources that are there, and get facts and information like this. And this kind of technology is having an impact, not just in education, but look at the publishing industry, look at the newspaper industry. These industries are adjusting because of the impacts technology has. The challenge for us with technology in education is that, you know, there's the constant streaming of information now. The question for us is how we take that information and turn it into knowledge. Just because there's information out there, it doesn't mean that, you know, kids know how to tap into it. The kids still need that connection between, that essential connection between the teacher and the student. It arguably is more necessary now than ever before. And so, you know, I just talked about the fiscal scenarios that we're in. You know, it's a tough balance between technology, educational dollars going towards technology or other resources like teachers.
21st century learning is one of the phrases that's used to describe how we will do things like integrate technology with our public school instruction, correct?
Yes. I do have to say, I think that the debate about 21st century learning is actually tremendously exciting at this point in time. I'm glad it's happening because I think it'll have a significant impact on a number of areas that I think we would like to see change take place in. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that we wouldn't be able to have a debate about the 21st century learning without the 20th century learning. You know, I think that sometimes the education in the 20th century learning gets, the role that it has played gets downplayed, and that's unfortunate because it has served as a very, very essential component of a democratic society. And if that principle isn't recognized and isn't carried into the 21st century learning, then I think that there's an issue. And
among the priorities you see looking back has been the provision of equity.
Provision of equity,
I hear you saying that
absolutely.
very clearly. Okay, thank you, Stepan. We'll be back in just a moment.
When I first came to SFU, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. So I started into a specialized French cohort program and got involved in the French Student Union, thinking for sure that I wanted to go into journalism. When I got into my second semester, I suddenly wasn't so sure what I wanted to do anymore. So I started to explore a little bit. Archaeology, communications, history, even kinesiology. And then I decided to go on exchange to France for a year. I was really enjoying my history classes and quickly realized that's what I wanted to study. But all the exploring I had done in other departments still counted towards my degree. I also got involved in campus life. I was an orientation leader for a year, became a community advisor in residence, helped start a choir, I even took a rowing course. Now I'm in my 5th year studying a history major and French and poli-sci minors, and I'm still involved in residence. I'm an area coordinator now and working on sustainability initiatives around campus. After SFU, I have lots of possibilities of what I could do. International development, leadership, teaching. But whatever I do, I know I'll be ready for it.
Welcome back. Stepan, although it would be very controversial, there has been talk in this province for some years about abolishing school boards and the role of school trustees. I imagine you're against that idea, but I'd like you to talk about what school trustees do, how they fit in this general picture of delivering education for our youngsters.
Yeah, there has been that kind of talk, and there have been signals. The provincial government has been sending signals that it's been considering either amalgamating boards or replacing boards with appointed boards or education authorities in some cases. It hasn't happened up to date. You know, I guess my position would be slightly biased and could be perceived as somewhat self-serving, but it is up to your viewers to make a decision. At the end of the day, I think that elected office in the community, whether it's a city councilor or school trustee, to a community voter, it's the most accessible level of politics. It's the most accessible politician that you can raise concerns with and actually be able to trace that and see the kind of impact that it makes. And so I think it plays a fundamental democratic function in our communities. You know, in a more globalized world where we see things being centralized, I think governance of education must stay within local communities because ultimately local input matters, and that's where public has their opportunity.
So as a trustee, you want to have influence going into the schools of your district, and you also, I suppose, would like to have some influence going to the provincial level through the ministry and so on. Under the current state of affairs, do you feel that trustees are having, in your case, do you feel you have that kind of influence headed both ways?
Well, you're right. The responsibilities are twofold. On one hand, you have the local governance, so to speak, you know, the administration of the budget, policies, personnel. On the other hand, there's a more creative side to it, which is what I like to see develop to a greater level, is the advocacy that trustees do. And I think that if the role isn't being played to the level that it should be played, I think it is because we are not playing that role in a way that I think we should. I think that I often see school boards take a bit of a back seat in the education debate as opposed to being at the forefront. We let the teachers do the debate, we let the parents do the debate, and we kind of just stand behind and gaze. As if those issues are not our issues, as if parents' rights are not our issues, or compensation for teachers isn't our issue. So I do want to see a greater role and a greater voice for trustees provincially. And I think we've been seeing some of it over the last few years.
Well, I've been to some of the AGMs of the trustees and observed them in other settings and read in the media about them. And I have a feeling that as a group, they've been thrown somewhat off balance over the last decade by this implication that maybe they will be abolished. I mean, that's kind of an intimidating suggestion, and certainly doesn't motivate them to speak out, certainly against anything the government would want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there clearly are just the two choices. There's a choice to, speak out and make your voice public, or there's another option, which I think we've been leaning closer to, unfortunately, which is to have a lower profile and hope that you fly under the radar and not make noise and do the government's dirty work, as some people say.
Yeah, coming, from 5 U.S. states before I came to British Columbia, in some ways British Columbia is very democratic, but in other ways it's very authoritarian. And the setting in education that I've experienced has felt somewhat top-down in the years that I've been here. And that, what I've just described is an example of it. I felt the trustees have been a little off balance in being able to fully express themselves, because in the background was this hint that maybe they wouldn't be there anymore if they became a problem. Anyway, it's a new day now in British Columbia public education, and everything's in flux. I know that you have some things going on in Maple Ridge-Pitt Meadows that you call pilot projects that are of special interest, and I like to see reforms that are concrete and we can describe to our viewers. So would you talk about some of the things that you're proud that you're developing in your school district? Well,
first of all, we have had for over 15 years now a secondary school which is a self-paced school, Thomas Haney Secondary, one of the very few schools on the continent that actually practices and has been practicing personalized learning for a number of years. And that's really exciting. I've had a privilege to go to that school, and it's definitely where I think education needs to be moving and is moving in many ways. We also have an elementary school that's on a year-round calendar, which is bursting by the seams and is a very popular school. And we're now working on a very exciting project, which is really dear and near to my heart, which is environmental education. And we've partnered with Simon Fraser University, with federal government, on an environmental school. And that's coming up in September. And I really hope that it would take off, because there's really a huge need to change the way that education works in a way that gets kids to connect back with their senses, with their emotions, with the planet, with the food system, with the ecosystem. It's really overdue, and so it's really exciting to see it happen in our district.
Yeah, I think there's fear among some environmentalists that since the recession of 2008, there's been a loss of momentum because of the economy souring, a loss of momentum in the environmental area. So I don't think we're hearing as much about it, so it's good to know that you've institutionalized something in the district to help move those values.
And it's an example of something that isn't driven top-down, but but the other way around. It really is a grass. It's a change the teachers wanted to see take place, that our educational leaders wanted to see happen. And so pieces came into place, and we're now seeing it percolate. And that is actually the only way that change can take place in the education system. If it's brought down, it's resisted. If it comes up, it has a potential to make a huge and tremendous difference.
Well, I agree with you on that. I think the healthiest education systems are the ones that are grown up out of neighborhoods and school catchments. And there are situations where an area is deprived in some way economically or culturally that it can't generate the social capital to do that. But that's rare here in Canada. And that does create, I think, the healthiest schools. And that's what brings the trustee in as a person to convey the messages from the neighborhood and community. I'm wondering, did the trustees have a role in the creation of the environmental school?
Well, we've definitely been there all along with a unanimous support for the idea, and we've provided that support all along. Simon Fraser University has been instrumental and we've traditionally had a very strong partnership with SFU. I don't think I want to take a credit for the work that's been done by educators. I am, though, very pleased to be able to support it and see it develop and make a difference.
Well, one of the things we're getting at here is the importance of values in a public education setting, in a school setting. I think the lay public, the non-educator public observing education often thinks that we're kind of a training ground for the 3 R's, but values are more preeminent really in what we do than cognitive development. First, you have to get your values straight, and the public schools are society's forum for propagating values. And the environmental example you give is a perfect illustration of that.
And I don't think you can segregate the environment in one silo here, or food or nutrition into. I think it's all connected.
Yeah.
You know, the way that we are healthy as human beings is the same way that we interact with the planet. Or, you know, I don't think values remain in one area but don't transfer into the other area. So when we talk about development, emotional, physical development of children, I think that it's really, really essential that there's that holistic approach.
Yes, that's the word I was thinking too, and it is another thing that has been lost a lot in the accountability debate, is breaking things down into performance, into test scores, and forgetting the big picture of whether or not at the end of the pipeline out is emerging a healthy, fully developed, holistically mature young person who's healthy physically as well as emotionally, mature emotionally, and has the cognitive skills to move into society, either into higher education or into occupation. Yeah, we have to keep the focus on the big picture and the whole person, and that isn't much in the public sphere. That gets lost.
Unfortunately, it does, and you know, we've seen funding removed, standards brought in, and we've focused on meeting those standards, and we've lost something very essential. And so I think the society, the public, needs to ask themselves a very critical question, and that is, what is the purpose of the education system? Is the purpose of it to drive economic activity, or is there a more essential purpose, which is citizenship and character building, value building? Clearly, economic value is still there, but I'm worried that economic goals have been driving a lot of social services, and that is an issue.
Yeah, well, it's reassuring to me to see a person in your role thinking along these lines, because I share the same concerns. I feel that we're allowing economics to define us, and they don't define us. They are a secondary effect out of a well-developed personality and a skilled person. They will be a valuable economic participant in society. Absolutely. But if they don't have their health and their emotions and their cognitive skills up to a certain level, they can't be turned into some sort of a machine to participate in society. Yeah. So, yeah, I think you probably are reflecting a majority view in your district that way too, because I think most parents have that in their value setting for their children.
I think it's reflected throughout the system. We have really wonderful teachers, as is the case in many other communities. We have really dedicated principals, administrators. We have a wonderful new superintendent, Jana Admin, who's been doing a fantastic work for the district in terms of, you know, allowing some of those ideas to percolate up.
Well, thank you for coming on to the program and illustrating by your words and your presence what a school trustee thinks about, how they act in society, and how they make their contribution to their community. I wish you good luck going forward in your career, and again, congratulations for coming at such a young age into a role of influence. It's reassuring to those of us who are fans of the democratic process.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Stepan. We'll be back in a moment. Our public schools are an opportunity for socially meaningful democratic governance. The network of elected school boards and other stakeholder groups connects and identifies persons who are empowered to propose education practice and policy. These groups include superintendents, teachers and principals, parents and the ministry, faculties of education, and citizens at large, including through their organizations. We need a forum and structure, a system for in-depth discussion, committee work, and policy formation. British Columbia is ready to define itself for the 21st century by declaring its educational values. We need a communal way of expressing who we hope the coming generations will be. Aside from the mostly economic business of government, we should dedicate adequate attention and resources to explaining our aspirations and values to our young people. Of course, we have to first express them for ourselves as British Columbians. Would you participate in such discussions? Do you have opinions you would like your representatives to carry forward? Thank you for thinking about Your Education Matters.